is, yeah.
Okay, there we go. Okay, so I will just briefly thank you very much for taking time out of your busy day to attend this workshop. So I'm going to work through the fundamentals of DA, what the toolkit's all about, why Discipline Agile, and then get into improvement topics, both at the team level as well as at the organization level. And then finally end with a discussion of Agile career paths for project managers. So Discipline Agile, what is Discipline Agile about? So Discipline Agile is a toolkit. It's not a framework. So where the frameworks tell you what to do, Discipline Agile tells you what to think about and gives you options. So our goal is to help you to become more effective at getting better, to help you get better at getting better, because you are a unique person, you're on a unique team, your organization is unique. So these one-size-fit-all methods, even though they're attractive, they really don't get the job done. And I'm gonna show you why in a few minutes. I'm gonna justify that with actual industry data. They're good starts, don't get me wrong, but they are not they're not the end goal. So Discipline Agile, well, Agile in general starts with being Agile, about what's the mindset? How should we go about thinking about Agile, or about being more effective? And 20 years ago, 21 years ago now, a group of 17 people got together and they wrote the Manifesto for Agile Software Development, which most people just refer to as the Agile Manifesto. And that was wonderful. That was a fantastic piece of work, but it's a bit old. It's 21 years old now, and it was focused on software development. We have gone beyond software development in the Agile community, and we've learned a few things. Frankly, the Agile Manifesto addresses problems faced by software development teams 20 years ago. The vast majority of them have been solved, and so we can unshackle ourselves from the thinking of the 90s when it gets down to it. So anyways, one of the things that we've done at PMI is we stepped back and we asked ourselves, well, what we currently know today, and given the scope of business or enterprise agility, how would we rewrite the manifesto? So we've written we've developed what we call the DA mindset. So it's a collection of principles. So we believe in these principles. And because we believe in these principles, we make promises both to ourselves and to the people that we work with. Here's how we're going to behave. Here's how we're going to work. And finally, in order to fulfill these promises, we follow a collection of guidelines. And this is what guides us in our behavior and in how we work and how we think. And a couple of points I want to make here. First of all, it's mostly about being lean and being people-oriented. It's not just about being agile. And it's about far more than just software development. Frankly, there's nothing about software development in the DA mindset. So, because we really are looking at the full enterprise and what you need to do there. I should also point out, you don't need to madly write these things down. I've made this slide deck available to your chapter, so it'll be available after this this webinar, and all this material is on the website, and I'll share that URL towards the end. So Discipline Agile is an umbrella over many hundreds of techniques. And the name is a bit of a misnomer. It's a hybrid. So what we do is we put techniques into context, because the idea is that you want to pick the right the right techniques, the right ways of working for your unique team, and put them together in a way that makes sense for you. So think of it like you go to the pantry, you get the ingredients you need to make your meal, and then you make the meal that's appropriate for your family. And we'll all eat dinner tonight, but it'll be different dinners because we're different people in different situations, and dinner tonight will be different than what it was last night, more than likely, right? Because the situation has changed, and you don't want to eat the same thing over and over and over and over and over again. So it's the same thing with your way of working. Different teams in different situations will work in different ways. This is inherently and observably true. So how do you choose? Because you're not process experts, right? So there's about 1,600 techniques in the Discipline Agile toolkit. I don't expect you to be an expert at 1,600 techniques. It's naive. It just doesn't work that way, right? And yet you need to have enough process expertise to choose the right ways of working. And this is what we do in DA. We help you to make better decisions about how you're going to work. And as I said earlier, our scope in DA is enterprise agility. It's not just about software development. And we've organized the toolkit into 4 layers. The first layer is the foundational layer. And this is where fundamental concepts are. This is where the mindset lands, where people concepts. So how, what are the roles and responsibilities, teaming structures, good stuff like that. Fundamental concepts from Agile, Lean, and Serial, the more traditional or predictive techniques, if you still want to use that word. And then ways of working. How do we improve our way of working, and how do we choose the right way for us? Building upon that is the DevOps layer. This is where a lot of the IT concepts are. So Discipline Agile delivery, how do you approach the development of software-based products, security, data management, IT operations, all that good stuff. So how do you do enterprise class DevOps? Because DevOps is about more than just development operations. It's about these other topics as well. Like, how do you bring security into the mix and do so effectively without messing everything else up? And how do you bring data into the mix without messing everything up? So how does it all fit together is the question. So building upon DevOps is the value stream layer. So how do we bring products and services to our customers? Or in the case of those of you working for the government, to the citizens of your country? How do you bring value to the external people, and sometimes the internal people within your organization as well? So how do all these things fit together? These hexes are something that we call process blades or process areas. And the idea is different people in different parts of organization will work in different areas, will focus on different things. So the security people will work in a manner that reflects what security people need to achieve. And the marketing people will work in a way that reflects marketing, and so on, right? And marketing is a very different thing than security, which is different yet again than research and development, and so on. So this is why the toolkit goes into these areas, because these are all these things are important. Now, in some cases, government agencies might not be worried about sales and marketing. Actually, they probably are worried about marketing, at least from a communications point of view. But certainly, these other topics are important, even outside of the business world. So, so how do you take an Agile, or how do you become better at people management, human resources? How do you become better at enterprise architecture, and so on? So, and how does it all fit together? So the scope of the DA toolkit is enterprise agility. It's not just software development. It's not just program and portfolio management. It really is the entire enterprise. Hence the hence the mindset. It's an enterprise class mindset. The DEA has been adopted by a range of organizations worldwide. This is just a small number of them. Notice how there's different types of organizations. There's restaurants, there's financial institutions, there's some government agencies in there, there's software agencies, software organizations in there, and many others. And that's all good. So this is not industry specific at all, and rightfully so. So why Discipline Agile? Why should you be interested in this sort of a thing? Well, a good question to start with is, how effective are frameworks in practice? The Scrum and SAFe and LESS and Nexus and everything else. And there's lots of great rhetoric, marketing rhetoric out there, and lots of good stories, but they're all coming from the purveyors of those frameworks. So the Scrum people will tell you, hey, Scrum is really awesome, do Scrum. And the SAFe people will tell you SAFe is really awesome, and do SAFe. And yeah, they all work in certain situations, but not others. And how well do they work? Is an interesting question. So, anyways, I'm a bit of a quant. If you know, for those of you who know my background, I'm a data guy, and I'm a firm believer in looking at industry data and rather than marketing rhetoric. So, anyways, so what happens when you transform, when you adopt one of these frameworks? Well, and when it works out well. So we'll assume things work out well for you. There's an initial learning curve, like it or not, right? You got to do some training. You're learning this new thing, so your effectiveness goes down for a while, and that's okay, right? You're learning something new. It's a new way of working, so you're going to take a bit of a hit. But then, if you're successful, things get better. You learn how to work in a Scrum manner or a safe manner, or whatever framework it is that you've adopted. So things get better, but then they level out because you hit the limits of the framework. Scrum solves a certain problem. Safe solves a certain problem. Less solves a certain problem. Once you solve the problem, there's not really much there for you anymore, which is fine, right? And once again, you get wonderful marketing rhetoric. It's the art of the possible. You can tailor it to meet your own needs, and that's all certainly true. But they don't really give you any advice to do so, other than hire our expensive consultants or figure it out. You're smart, figure it out on your own. And yeah, you can figure it out on your own, maybe, but it's pretty expensive and time consuming. So you hit the limits. A couple of years ago, Ivar Jakobsen wrote a really good article for IEEE Software titled something like, "Are you in method prison? Are you in method jail?" And it's basically about this problem that you reach the limits of the method or the framework, and then you're basically stuck. And this is what's happened with most organizations. So the question then becomes, how high is this plateau that you've hit? What's the actual benefit? And I'm sure you've heard wonderful stories. Adopt this framework and you'll be 10 times more productive, or you can do twice the work in half the time, and all that good sort of stuff. And certainly, I've seen situations where that's true. But it's not because of the framework, it's not because of the method being adopted. It's because the organization was such a mess that doing anything would have helped. So, what's happening on average? Well, if you look at the industry data, and this is from a study from Dr. Don Reifer, who earned his PhD answering the question, how effective is Agile in practice? And he's turned this actually into a business. He's consulting now. He's doing research consulting, basically, and so you can buy his data and get advice from him. So the interesting thing I like about his study is, first of all, it's statistically significant. Second, it's not biased from what I can tell. So this is not data coming from the safe guys telling you how wonderful safe is, or the Scrum guys telling you how wonderful Scrum is, or the Discipline Agile guys telling you about how wonderful Discipline Agile is. It's data coming from a researcher that doesn't have an axe to grind. And what's interesting is his numbers are a bit lower than the marketing numbers, but still significant. Like 7 to 12% productivity improvement is a pretty good thing. So nothing to sneeze at. But do you want to do better? Can you do better? And this is where Discipline Agile comes in. So my advice would be, instead of looking at what organizations are doing because it's easy, why don't you look at the organizations that are really scary? The apex predators. So the Amazons, the Apples of the world, the Googles, the Spotifys, the Teslas, the companies, the Alibabas, the companies that are really hard to compete against. Right? How did Apple get as good as it is? How did Amazon get as good as they are? That is an interesting question to ask. And do you think it's because they adopted Scrum or Safe? No, of course not. And you can read case studies, you can read books about these companies. They're not talking about these frameworks. What they do talk about is they have taken responsibility for their own way of working. They choose to get better. They choose to improve. They follow a technique called continuous improvement. So let's explore what that's all about. So and there's different flavors of this. I'll go through it in detail, one of them. So in continuous improvement, you run into an issue. Right? We want to improve something. We want to get better at testing. We want to get better at faster time to market, whatever it is. We've got an issue we want to address. So we identify several ways that we could potentially, potentially address that challenge. We try one or more of them out. We, give them a fair shake. We give them a good try to see if the technique works for us in our situation. And then we assess whether or not it worked. We measure. If it worked out well, we adopt it. If it didn't work out well, we abandon it. And if we're polite, we share our learnings with others, at least within the organization, right? So the idea here, and there's different flavors of this. You're probably familiar with PDCA or PDSA, but there's different flavors of this technique. This is a technique that's been around for decades, common lean technique. Kaizen, we improve in small steps. So the organizations that are doing this, the Amazons, the eBays of the world, they have an improvement curve that looks like this. It doesn't plateau. And the reason why it doesn't plateau is because they're constantly improving. They're constantly experimenting. They're constantly choosing to get better, and they're improving in small steps. So Amazon is as effective as they are because they've been doing continuous improvement for several decades now. And they're still doing it. They're deathly afraid that somebody will catch up to them and get better than they are. So they're still improving over time. So this is, I'm going to talk about transformations in a few minutes, but this is a hard lesson that organizations need to learn. Digital transformations or agile transformations, X transformations are not projects. They're not projects. Get that out of your heads right now. They might start out as projects, so fair enough, but they don't end that way. They go on forever. If you're serious about improving, they go on forever. And this is what the apex predators do in practice. And like I said, there's numerous case studies and books talking about this. Easy stuff to find out about if you choose to. So one of the challenges in the Agile community is what I call the failing fast fail. Because what they do is, in the Agile community, there's a lot of coaches, and what you want to do when you're doing continuous improvement is you want to fail fast. Let's try something out, do it quickly, fail fast, because failing fast is far better and far cheaper than failing slowly. So they got that right. I'll give them that. But the problem is failing is still failing. And there's wonderful marketing rhetoric. It's not really a failure because you've learned what doesn't work. Okay, fine, whatever. But if you're the person paying the bills for all those failures, that gets pretty old really quickly. We didn't fail, we learned something. Yeah, so what? It cost us a lot of money. Can we be smarter about what we're doing? So keep that in mind. So what actually happens? I spun you a story about continuous improvement. What actually happens in the real world? Well, you're going through this process, and you have, first time you fail. It's like we ran an experiment, we failed. And that's normal, right? Sometimes the experiments work, sometimes they don't work. So we failed. So we try again. We fail again. Try again. And we fail again. And we try again. And finally we succeed. So then we adopt it and we share what actually worked, the positive experiment, and we continue on. And the consultants, all the coaches, they'll spin a good story and they'll say, well, at least we failed quickly, and that's good. And okay, fine, I'll give them that. Failing fast is far better than failing slowly, but still, failure is failure. So can we do better? So how do we improve this process? So the first thing we want to do is we recognize that the symptom is that some experiments fail. And this can be hard. Organizations that aren't used to failure, that aren't used to experimentation, aren't used to a hypothesis-driven approach, struggle with this as a concept. Another challenge here is that they also have this issue that there are failures, that sometimes, and yes, you'll learn something, but failure is a failure. So failing fast is fine, but could we succeed earlier? Could we be smarter about this, right? So the issue then becomes one of, we recognize the real problem is in the second step. If we could get better at identifying what to experiment with then we would make better decisions. We would fail less often. You're still going to fail every so often. There's, you're only human. You're going to make a few mistakes. You're going to guess wrong. But can we be smarter about how we identify things to experiment with? And of course we can. This is why you want to hire an experienced coach. All the coaches will tell you that, and it's true. If you can hire a good coach, they will help you to improve, and they will give you suggestions because they have experience. If they have experience in the problems you're struggling with, then you'll be okay. Because the issue becomes one of, even though you're unique and you're in a unique situation, the reality is that you're struggling with problems that have more than likely been solved, been addressed by hundreds or thousands of people before you. So if you can leverage their learnings, you can make better decisions. And that's why you hire a coach. You hire somebody with more experience than you, and they can give you advice. But can you find a good coach? Because there's a lot of people claiming to be coaches. Are they any good? Do they have the experience in what you're struggling with? Can you even identify these people? Can you attract them? Can you afford them? They're not cheap. So there's a bit of a problem here. And particularly when you're new to all this sort of stuff, you don't even have the skills to hire coaches or grow your own coaches because you're at the novice level, right? So you got a problem there. Another technique that works with coaches, and a coach, coach with a knowledge base is far better. So if you have a process knowledge base that you can leverage that of these hundreds of techniques, then you can make better decisions. So that's what we do in DA. So let me walk you through what that looks like. So this is a technique that we call guided continuous improvement. So it's the same, so it's an improvement on continuous improvement. So an interesting question to ask is, where would you need to improve in your organization? Well, obviously at the team level, right? There's, every team can get better at whatever it is that they're doing. You can improve across teams. So my team needs to interact with other teams. So for example, my team needs to get funding from the finance people. So we need to interact. We need to collaborate with each other effectively. And if we're not well aligned, or if one of the teams is following an older or inappropriate technique or something that's not very effective, then that affects both teams. So we've got a problem there. We've also got the issue, and then of course, how do we improve across the organization? How do we improve across our value streams? So there's 3 levels of potential improvement that we could do, that we could apply GCI to. Now, when we're doing this, unfortunately, like the reality on the ground for a lot of Agile transformations or digital transformations is that there tends to be a glass barrier to Agile adoption. Even though Agile has been successfully adopted in most IT organizations now, it rarely gets out of IT. It's a bit of a problem. Okay, it's not easy, and it's because frankly, a lot of the coaches are IT coaches, and they don't really understand finance or HR or marketing or these other areas in an organization, and they can't speak to them intelligently. So it's all over. Let alone making changes across the organization. There's organizational antibodies. Your organization will push back your existing culture, your existing ways of working. There's people, other people in an organization are very happy with working the way that they work. They have a different view of the universe. The marketing people look at things differently than the security people, for example, which is different yet again than the enterprise architecture people, and so on. So you've got these different groups in your organization with different mindsets, with different ways of looking at things, different priorities, probably different reward structures. So of course, change is hard in these organizations. So team coaches, which is the vast majority of coaches out there, focus on improvement at the team level, which is a good thing. That's important. But you need more senior coaches to be able to coach across teams. Because like I said, if I'm coaching, a software development team, and then we've got an issue with the finance people, if I can't also coach and, collaborate with and speak with and coach the finance folks, then we're never going to solve this problem, right? Because they'll have their way of working, we'll have our way of working, and they're not going to listen. They're going to do whatever it is that they want to do. They're not going to improve, because we've got to make an improvement across these two teams. We need to negotiate a new way of working that we're going to experiment with. Both teams need to try it out and see if it works. And then if it does, then both teams need to adopt it. So it's harder than just focusing on team level improvement. And of course, it's harder yet again when multiple teams are involved, right? This is what enterprise coaches focus on. So these are very experienced people with deep coaching and consulting knowledge. So let's work through an example. So I'll work through a team coaching example just to see how you can apply the toolkit. So in this scenario, we have an existing team and they're bringing a product to market. They build teddy bears, and it's not a software team. So they're building teddy bears, and the existing kids, the existing customers love our teddy bears. Unfortunately, though, we're not growing our market. So even though we're bringing new teddy bears out to market using new teddy bear technology, or whatever teddy bears are, however they're made, we're not attracting new customers. So our existing customers love us, but we're just not growing the market. We just can't attract new customers for some reason. So we've got a problem. So what do we do? Well, we've got a requirements problem here. We don't understand the requirements that these new customers want. So we go to the toolkit and we realize we've got an issue with exploring scope, the way we gather requirements, the way we explore what our stakeholders, what our customers want. Now, if I have somebody on my team who is a deeply experienced business analyst, then they've probably got some or a coach on the team with great business analysis experience, they've probably got some pretty good ideas about what we can do. But sadly, I don't have that experience in my team, right? So we dive down to the next level of detail. This is something we call a process goal diagram. Because remember, there's 1,600 techniques that are put into context by the DA toolkit. So how do you find them? That's a valid question. So anyways, so the way you can find them, one way is by traversing these goal diagrams. So the way you read this diagram is when we're exploring scope, there's several process decisions that we need to make or that have been made for us. So if we're following an existing framework, the framework has already made decisions for us and redacted the rest. They'll tell us, here's the 5 best practices to explore scope, write epics and user stories and a couple other things, and it'll all be good. But then that tends to be problematic if you've got problems, if you've got requirements that aren't captured well by those techniques. So the purple boxes in the middle are these decision points. These are things we need to think about. So, how are we going to explore the purpose of this thing that we're building or thing that we're buying? How are we going to explore the usage, how people work with things? How are we going to explore the domain, the business process, and so on, right? On the right-hand side are potential options, techniques. Each of these techniques are put into context. So there's a description, and we'll see this in a minute. There's a description of the technique and the trade-offs associated with this. So that way you can decide which technique is best for you. Now there's 2 types of lists there. There's lists with arrows towards the bottom of the diagram in this case, and there's lists without. The lists with arrows are called ordered lists. And what that means is strategies towards the top of the list are generally more effective than the strategies towards the bottom. When there's no arrow, that is an unordered list. And what that means is that even though each of those techniques have a trade-off, we can't generally say this strategy is generally better than this strategy, right? So in some cases with the ordered lists, we're hinting at an improvement path for you. In unordered lists, it's choose what's right for you. So in this scenario, we have problems with exploring the way that we gather requirements from potential new customers. We just don't understand the new customers. So our product owner is doing a great job, but she just doesn't understand these new customers. So what do? So, she's writing epics and user stories, the classic Agile techniques, and it's not working out. So once again, if we had somebody with deep business analysis experience on this team, this diagram is probably enough of a checklist or just enough of a reminder. Oh yeah, I remember these techniques. I did this on a project a couple of years ago. We need to do X, and they could, and then here's why, and they could probably point us in the right direction. Or if we had a good coach, but sadly we don't have that. So because no coach can know everything, right? It's just not possible. So anyways, we got a problem. So we dive down to the next level of detail. So we realize we have an issue with exploring usage, right? How do we understand how people want to use our teddy bears in order to get value for them? So we dive down to the, so our issues there. So we dive down to the next level. This is a screenshot from the DA browser as so at pmi.org, and I'm going to once again, I'll share this towards the end. Anybody can access this information. It's all online free of charge. So we dive down to the next level of detail. And in this case, we see that we look at the descriptions of these techniques, these various options we have, and trade-offs. There's no such thing as a best practice. That's marketing nonsense. Any given practice is best in some situation, or fairly effective in some situations, and is a disaster in others, right? Because there's always upsides and downsides. There's trade-offs, advantages and disadvantages for any given strategy. So we look at these descriptions, we do a little bit of reading, and we realize personas sound like they're the way to go. Now, once again, if we have somebody on the team with persona expertise, then have at it. If not, and I'm not showing it here, but you go down to the next level of detail and you read a book, or you read an article. So there's links to books and articles and videos and stuff like that to go into more details about these various techniques. So you just keep drilling down to the level of detail that you need for your situation. And what we're doing now is, at this point, we can make a better decision, because more than likely, personas are probably the technique that we need to use to solve the problem that we've got. So with just a little, by using the toolkit, we can identify a strategy that will more than likely work for us in our situation with just a little bit of knowledge. So that's the value, that's the value proposition for DA. We help you to make better improvement decisions. So what happens where adopting a framework enjoys an improvement curve that looks like this, and this is good. This is nothing wrong with that. That's good. You can't complain about that. And the apex predators, the Amazons of the world, enjoy an improvement curve that looks like that. In DA, you can enjoy an improvement curve that looks like this, because you're not failing as often. You can leverage the learnings of others before you, if you have the humility to recognize that you are dealing with problems that other people have already solved, often years ago. Some of the techniques in the DA toolkit have literally been around for 4 or 5 decades, and they're still pretty good in the right situation. So our philosophy in DA: start where you are. So if you're currently doing SAFe, great, improve on SAFe. Currently doing Scrum, great, improve on Scrum. If you're new to Agile, great, improve on that. So do the best that you can in the situation you face. And I know you're doing that, you're professionals, but always strive to get better. And that's what the toolkit enables you to do. And guided continuous improvement is one of several improvement techniques in the toolkit. It's probably the most versatile, but it's just one of many. So how do we do successful Agile transformations, or digital transformations, as the case may be? That's a good question. And I'm going to obviously focus on Agile transformations here. So in DA, we talk about a 3-step transformation strategy, and this is at a very high level right now. So keep that in mind. So the first step is to align. Where are you, right? So, you start where you are, but you got to know where you are, right? Like, what situation are we currently in? What challenges do we currently face as an organization? What do we want to do? What path do we need to take? Because my improvement strategy should be fit for purpose. An organization that is currently doing SAFe will have a different improvement path than an organization that is brand new to Agile. Of course, that's blatantly obvious. An organization that is doing Scrum, or at least been struggling a bit with Scrum and is doing it in some places, not others, will have a different improvement path than either one of those situations. Of course, that's blatantly obvious. So different organizations, different situations will work and will improve in different ways. One improvement strategy does not work for all situations. So if you're looking for some magical, here's the 8-step process for doing improvement, that's a sucker's bet. It'll work for some, and it has probably worked for some, but it won't work for all because you've got to have the right fit for the situation that you face. And then once you get on the improvement path, and what the real goal is not to adopt a framework or a method. That might be part of the strategy. That's fair enough. That's okay. The real goal should be to become an apex predator. And what does that mean? Well, the apex predators are learning organizations. They do continuous improvement. They know that transformations are not projects. They're a lifestyle. Transformations never end. We are constantly improving. We're constantly striving to get better. Because if we don't, we'll stagnate, you'll plateau, and you're in trouble again. Because what'll happen is the organizations that don't plateau will catch up and pass you. Right? That's the problem. So you want to become a learning organization. You want to get to the point where you're thriving, where you're all constantly getting better. So this is what this looks like. So the first step is basically the same. You align, you do an assessment, you figure out where you are. And there's different ways of doing that, of course. But basically you start where you are. You figure out where, and to do that, you got to figure out where you are, what you need to work on. Then, depending on what path you need to take. So part of alignment is figuring out, oh, we're here. Here's our strengths. Here's our weaknesses. Therefore, we need to pick the right path. So an organization that's new to Agile, a greenfield situation, will transform in a very different way than an organization that is doing safe. They will transform very differently than an organization that's doing less, and so on. You might be in a situation where your IT department has become reasonably agile, but now the situation is how do we help the vendor management, the procurement people become more agile? How do we help finance become more agile as a business area transformation or business areas transformation? Because more than likely there'll be 3 or 4 business areas in your organization, those hexes, that are still struggling with more modern ways of working. And in the end, but regardless of the path that you get on, your end goal is to thrive. That's what you're aiming for. You want to become a learning organization. So of course, there are details in behind all of this, which we're in the process of publishing at the PMI.org site. So feel free to go check that out. And like I said, the URLs are coming up for this in a minute. So just to wrap up here before we go to questions. So what would be a reasonable Agile career path for a project manager? Well, once again, it depends. You've got choices, which is good. So if you're an existing PMP or an existing CAPM, what could you possibly do? Well, you might want to become an Agile project manager. And there's a couple ways you can do that. Maybe you'll start by getting some microcreds, for example, like the Agile Hybrid Project Pro or the Agile Metrics microcred, and eventually work your way over to doing the work to earn your PMI ACP, a full credential. You might choose to become a product owner. This is a valid path for project managers. It's one that's often overlooked, but it's a valid path for Agile project, because if you look at the skills required to be a successful product owner, there's significant overlap with the existing skills of a project manager. So maybe you'll become you'll get a product owner certification. You might want to become a coach. This is a very common and valid career path for existing PMPs. So you'd first become a team coach by earning your DA Senior Scrum Master certification. That certification focuses mostly on team level improvement. After a couple of years, when you have the experience to qualify for it, you might become a senior coach. So earn your DA coach certification. And finally, you might want to become a DA value stream consultant, become an enterprise coach. Once again, you need several years of experience to do this. Another career path is to become a Scrum Master. This is what you've probably heard this many times, but yeah, become a Scrum Master. And then take the DASM, the Discipline Agile Scrum Master cert, or the CSM from the Scrum Alliance, or one of the Scrum.org certs. Right? There's a lot of Scrum Master certifications out there, and they're all pretty good. I think the DA one's a bit better because we look at the full enterprise and we give you options, whereas most of the Scrum certs will prescribe what to do. They'll tell you one way of doing things rather than giving you options. So depends on your mindset. How far along are you on the Agile learning curve? So PMI in general is about helping you to work smarter, as you know, right? To become change makers, to become successful in your organizations. So this is what we're really all about, and this is what we do in DA. This is our focus in the DA team. So I would invite you to learn more about DA. This is the URL for the DA hub. So if you go there, you can find out about the certs and a lot of details and free stuff, including the DA browser. I showed you a screenshot from that earlier on. Incredible. So earlier I was talking about all the various practices. Well, they're captured in detail in the browser. So the initial Agile DA certification that you would probably be interested in would be the DA Scrum Master. Building on that is the Senior Scrum Master. This is where you learn to become a team coach. DA coach helps you become a senior coach. And DA Value Stream Consultant is focused on enterprise coaching skills. So there's a lot of great free information on the PMI.org site. There's and on projectmanagement.com as well. And there's also a lot of great certification opportunities and microcreds as well. Earlier, I was talking about the Agile Metrics microcred and the Hybrid Project Pro and good stuff like that. So Discipline Agile is not a replacement for SAFe or Less or Scrum or other things. It is an addition to them. It's an improvement. So where Scrum and SAFe and others tell you, yes, they're the art of the possible and you can improve upon them, but then don't give you any advice to do so, DA provides that advice. Our focus in DA is to help you to coach, to help you to learn how to improve. Or as I like to say, we help you to get better at getting better, to help you truly become a learning organization and not just a SAFe shop or a Less shop or a Scrum shop, or so on. And all these methods are great. Don't get me wrong. They're great starts. That's the way you've got to look at it. They're great starts. They are not ending points. So thank you very much. I'm happy to take questions. If you want, please post questions, I guess, into the chat. And I guess that's been happening already. So I'll start answering. Okay. From Nabil, do we have industry data around average time and investment to achieve effectiveness? This can actually happen in days. It depends, right? So if you're adopting a simple technique, straightforward technique, you can become more effective in days. If you're adopting methods, it's weeks or months and years sometimes. So you probably asked that question around the time I was showing the industry stats. It depends on your situation. Smaller teams, improve faster than larger teams. Smaller organizations tend to improve faster than larger organizations, and so on. Here's one. Any suggestions for organizations juggling between project constraints such as cost reductions and how they can achieve benefit from DA to achieve quality? So in DA, we give you options, right? So if being on budget or being on time is one of the constraints, two of the constraints, or one or two of the constraints that you're operating under, you will make different decisions than if you don't have those constraints. I would suggest, though, and I appreciate how hard this is, few organizations can pull this off. I would suggest not looking at cost. That's a low maturity thing to be looking at. Instead, focus on value. So asking people, are you on budget, or are you reducing cost, or are you coming at this cost? That's easy to measure. It's easy to understand, but who cares? I don't care about, mature people don't care about that. The real question is are we adding value? Are we spending the money wisely? That's really what finance people want, or what they should be focused on. Not are you on budget? That's just naive. But you got to do the best you can do. Similarly, are you on schedule? I don't care. Unless I'm contracted for that date, or I have a regulatory, a legal issue for getting something on a certain date. The real question I should be asking, or that I should be getting asked, is are we delivering the right thing at the right time? Are we delivering it when it's ready to go? I was actually on a call just earlier this morning, talking about that very issue with an organization struggling with that as a concept. And they were hitting their dates, but they were shipping low quality stuff. So shipping crap on time, excuse my language, but really shipping garbage on time is not a win. It isn't, right? Nobody care. What they want is, given the choice, almost always is they would rather, have the right thing at the right time, and spend the money wisely. So those are very different behaviors and very different things to achieve. Here's a question. Can you share an example about how DAS, somebody who earned their DASM, was effective for a small endeavor like a tech startup? Yeah. Tech startups use Agile and DA all the time. So DASM gives you a great overview of Agile and Lean. It goes way beyond being a Scrum Master. It's really misnamed. Scrum is just a small part of it. It really teaches you how do you take an Agile or a Lean approach, pretty much on any type of team, but certainly on a software team, and do so successfully from beginning to end. So how does a project work? How does an Agile project work from beginning to end? How do we do continuous delivery if we're that mature? So how does architecture fit in? How does testing fit in? How does governance fit in? All these real world testing fit in, all these good things, right? Design, and how does it all fit together? So where Scrum, teaches you some great mindset stuff and some great meeting management techniques, it purposely doesn't go into technical issues like architecture and testing and coding and all these other things that you got to deal with. You got to deal with. So we work through that in DASM because you've got to have the bigger picture. And that's certainly for tech startups, but certainly for you could be a technical team or you could be a team in an insurance company that's been around for 100 years, and you've got very similar issues. A couple of years ago, I helped coach actually a life insurance company to adopt DA, and we were working in teams that we basically turned them into startup teams. I was working with a couple teams, and we literally took them from releasing like roughly, they were releasing maybe once a quarter, and thought which was good for an insurance company. It's pretty good actually. But they were, one of them was released once a quarter. The other one was, another one was releasing closer to once a year. And we got them releasing once a week into production. And regulatory compliance stuff once a week into production. So that was pretty good. And the team morale increased dramatically. Their effectiveness increased dramatically. Quality went up. The only way you can do that is for quality to go up. So anyways, all good stuff. Here's a couple questions from Hunain. I hope I pronounced that right. Does PMI also provide guidance on what tools are suited for which situation? Organizations can choose the right tool without needing a coach. Depends on how you use the term tool. So if you mean tool from a techniques point of view, so when do I do test-driven development? Then yes, that's what DA is all about, and it's on, like I said, it's online. So if you go to pmi.org/discipline-agile and poke around a bit, you can find the DA browser. If you're talking in terms of when do I use smart sheets over Microsoft Project, the answer is no. We're not in that business. No, the answer is just no, and we never will be. We don't give tool recommendations. The second question: by improving across the organization, do we only mean the interaction between the delivery team and the business unit? No, it could be between any type of team. It could be between the finance team and the procurement team, for example. So it's like team A and team B, or across. I didn't get into value streams at all, but across a value stream where we have multiple teams working together in order to deliver value to your customers. You could have 7 or 8 teams working together, and then a value stream consultant, an enterprise coach, would help you to negotiate a change across 8 teams, because it is what it is. The answer is yes. So bringing improvement within business units, which is why when you saw the hexes, there's only a handful of them were IT focused. Most of them were business focused. I don't know if you remember that one slide. Do we have any statistics which reveal the improvements Discipline Agile has brought to organizations? We're working on that. There's great statistics about individual techniques out there. So you got to remember, Discipline Agile covers 1,600 techniques at the present moment. So yeah, there's great statistics about test-driven development, for example, and pair programming and mobbing and other things like that. But yes, so at the individual practice level, there is. And we do have some stats in some of the case studies. So I should say yes, but not as many as I would like. And we're working on gathering more. So actually, opportunity here for me. If any of your organizations are doing Discipline Agile or embarking on doing Discipline Agile, and you'd be willing to be involved in a case study, then please reach out to me and or reach out to PMI in general. Because we'd be happy to help you and talk to you about that, because we're actively working on case study on documenting case studies right now. It's a bit of work, and we can help you do that. So yeah, if you've got number, if you're doing it, let us know, and we'd love to write you up. So anyways, I think that's I'm not seeing any more questions pop in. So if probably have time for one more question, or I guess we could wrap up as well.
Scott, if Tashfin here, I'd like to ask a question. I haven't posted it in the chat box, but if you allow, I could just go ahead and ask
go
it.
ahead, please.
Yeah, I just saw that you've mentioned the DA product owner as one of the new certifications, and since I was following the certification suite for DA, with I already got my DSSM and the DSC, and my result awaited for the DAVSC. So I was really hoping that my suite would be complete very soon. Till the time you showed another one, which I'm happy about, that there's some new learning opportunity. But yeah, are you guys planning on introducing the DA product owner certification as well?
Yeah, it's out right now. It's being offered to a limited extent. We're basically in beta, and it's being offered by PMI Training, which is an ongoing conference. So right now, basically, it's being run once a month virtually. We're just about to roll it out though to other training providers. So I hope in the next month or so it'll be a full-fledged product that we're advertising on the site and making available worldwide. But right now it's in beta basically.
All right, thanks.
Thank you so much, Scott, for the insightful presentation. I'm sure our viewers have also found really insightful, and thank you for answering some of our questions as well. And again, we'll be happy to have you again once more on maybe a related topic related to Discipline Agile